Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Get Lit here in the green space. I'm so glad to see all of you here. So this is our February Get Lit event, but it is happening in March. As some of you may know, our original event was scheduled for the day that the blizzard hit New York City. So we did have to sadly cancel our event at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, but I'm so glad to see so many of you here for our makeup, and we're so glad that our author could join us as well. For those who don't know me, I should have introduced myself first. I'm Jordan Loff. I'm a producer here at All of It and with Get Lit. I'm so excited that Angela Flournoy could join us. We're going to talk about the wilderness in just a second. I know you guys are so excited to hear from her and get to ask her some questions. I also want to thank our partners for this series, the New York Public Library. We're here in the green space tonight, and we're so grateful to them. But usually we are here each month at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, thanks to our generous partnership. And the New York Public Library, as many of you may know, also provides unlimited e-copies of our book each month to allow New Yorkers to read along with us. And we are so grateful for them. That's a good reminder to silence your cell phones, please. And yeah, we're just, thanks to their generosity, thousands of readers have been able to follow along with us each month, and we're so grateful to their partnership. We've been partnering on this project since 2020, so even though we're not there, we say hello to our New York Public Library readers and listeners, and thanks for your help. In case you also didn't know, Get Lit with All of It has recently launched our very own newsletter. It's very exciting. This will have all the latest updates on Get Lit events. It features author interviews, book recommendations, and more. If you aren't registered and you would like to, you can scan this little handy QR code. And also before we begin, I wanted to remind you that our work here at New York Public Radio is member supported. That support allows us to put on events like this. If you're a member already, thank you. Is anyone here a member? Does anyone? Yay! Wow! Oh my gosh, look at all these members. Thank you so much. If you haven't yet joined, I invite you to become a part of this magnificent community tonight. A donation of any size is welcome, and a monthly sustainer gift gives us stability to weather political storms and allow us to keep bringing this work to you, the public. There's another handy QR code now on the screens where you can learn more and maybe sign up to be a monthly donor. If you are not already, I know many of you are members, so thank you so much. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up our amazing host, Alison Stewart.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate you being at our first ever rescheduled Get Lit with All of It, darn blizzard. This is actually where our book club started over 6 years ago, right here in the green space. We used to give people wine. We don't do that anymore, I'm sorry. A little bit of housekeeping. There are mics everywhere to pick up how you're feeling about the books, what you think of the questions. So let our audience know that you're there so they can hear you on the radio. As we said, please silence your cell phones. You don't have to put them away. We love when you take pictures and repost them on Instagram. Our handle is @allofit, WNYC, and we will repost them. Please think of questions because we have mics going out to the audience in about 25 minutes. We're so thrilled to have Angela Flournoy with us. Usually we have a musical guest for these events, but unfortunately Emmanuel Wilkins was not able to join us. We hope to come to another event. But you know who is here? The booksellers P&T Knitwear are here with books that you can buy. They were so great on the last minute to come on down with some books, and you can get them signed by Angela Flournoy. She'll be signing books in the lobby. So let's get started. Angela Flournoy is the author of The Wilderness, which was longlisted for the National Book Award and was a finalist for the Kirkus Prize. Thanks to our partners at the New York Public Library, 2,602 of you were able to check out a copy of the novel to read along with us this month. Please welcome Angela Flournoy. How are you?
Very happy to be here. Very happy it's not snowing.
I was about to say, where were you during the blizzard?
At home.
At home. I heard that people actually emailed you to find out if you were going to reschedule the event. So I'm so glad you were able to join us.
Yes, there were some people, I hope they're here, that were like, I have read this book. I expect this event to be rescheduled. So I'm happy it was able to happen.
Was The Wilderness, was this the book that you intended to write?
Yes. I started thinking about this book in 2016, like in the summer of 2016, so about a year after my first novel, The Turner House, came out. And I wanted to write about what it felt like to have like a friend group and what it might look like to sort of age into middle age with those people. And I always wanted to project a little bit in the future because I wanted the characters to be around my age. And I was not yet middle-aged when I was thinking about this book back then. But then there were some things that happened in the fall of 2016 that made me be like, well, I really don't know what the future is going to look like because things are happening that I did not necessarily predict. So it just took a little longer, but the central concept was the same.
Why did you want to write about friendship?
Because I feel like many of the women I know, especially the Black women that were like my aunts and my mother and stuff, the central like love stories of their lives were actually their friends. Mm-hmm. Those were the relationships that helped me become the person I am because those are the people who helped to raise me. And really, before people were saying things like co-parent, they were really like my mother's co-parents. And I had not really read anything about that.
Were they your aunties? How many of you all are aunties out there? Yeah, okay.
Yes, my aunties. And so I felt like I was interested in why these relationships were so important. It wasn't that I had never read anything about friendship, but there was always a way that the stories that were ostensibly about women friends mostly ended up being about the men in their lives. And I really wanted that to not be the case in this story. I wanted it to be about, like, of course, people get married, they have kids, whatever, but it is about what keeps pulling these people back to each other.
Sort of your own Bechdel test for
Yes. Yes. Some people might think that, like, oh, well, the men, they don't matter. It's just that's not the story that this story is.
In the novel, The Wilderness, you write from so many different perspectives. What do you like about writing from so many perspectives?
I have tried to not do it. I did, my first novel was about a family with 13 adult siblings, and not all of them got their own POV, but a lot of them did. Mm-hmm. And it felt like it was a lot of work, and I figured out how to do it, and then I was like, okay, I don't need to do that again. But I think it has something to do, the reason why I was drawn to it again is something I'm very interested in, like networks. When I think about characters, I immediately think about who else is in their life. Like I could never write a character sketch that was just about an individual. It immediately becomes about the people that they are near and like how people think about them. And if I'm thinking about any experience, I'm always turning it around from how other people also experienced it.
There are 4 women in the book. I'm going to give you a quick one line about each, and then we'll go into each of them. Nakia, an upcoming chef. Monique, who is an influencer / librarian. January, a designer who's sort of in a stagnant romance and is pregnant. And Desiree, who doesn't quite know what to do with her life now that her granddad is gone. Which one of these women was the easiest for you to write, and which one was the hardest?
I think the character Nakia was the easiest to write. So Nakia is one of the things that I think makes particularly friendships in your like 30s, when people are really trying to figure out like, okay, how am I going to actually make the life that I think that I want? One of the ways that a kind of tension can find its way into relationships is the people who seem to know exactly what they want versus the rest of us who are like, this job seems fine, kind of just figuring it out. And Nakia is a person who I felt like it was useful to have a character who, from a very young age, knew what she wanted. Because those people, they can be really inspiring to their friends. They also can just be really confounding and frustrating to to have to live alongside. Even if you love them, it's not even necessarily jealousy. It's just, how do you know? How are you so sure? And so I knew I wanted a character like that. I think I have perhaps been that person in some people's lives because I have always wanted to do this thing. And it's because also that person, even if they're not making money or whatever, they seem fine in some ways because it's like I still am just doing this thing. And so writing that character was like, it was clear to me that part of her, just like her personality, the fact that she just wants to be in restaurants. That's what she wants to do.
How did you come up with their names? And do they have special meaning?
You know, a friend of mine put out a really good book that everyone should read called On Morrison. Namwali Serpal did. And we did an event last week in Philadelphia, and she was talking about Morrison's like intentionality with naming and how some names come from like the Bible or from mythology. And I wish I could explain why I decide to name people the names that I do. It really, there is no rhyme or reason. I wish there was. Sometimes it's just, I met someone when I was a senior in high school named January, and I had never met anyone named January before. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm putting that in my pocket. I don't know for what, but, and so 20-something years later, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. I need this name.
Do you take details and stick them sort of in the back of your mind, and then they come front when you need them for writing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I physically like write notes often, but things like names, I don't necessarily write down. I just, I need a name, and then a name just like appears.
We learn a lot about these friends and what they think of each other. It's not always kind. What new things do we learn about characters when we see them through the eyes of their friends instead of from their own point of view?
Oh, you learn so much. I think that one of the things I'm teaching right now, a graduate fiction workshop. I'm kind of like an itinerant academic, sometimes teach. And often in a workshop, people will be like, well, the problem is you can't see around this character. Like this character is presenting themselves some way, but we need an opportunity to see around them to get to some kind of truth. And I'm always like, well, what is the truth? Like, is there, I've always been suspicious of this idea of there being like a single truth about a person. And I think that is why I'm interested in having other people's view of what, like how a person is or how they behaved in a situation, so that a reader can get a sense of them just more in like three dimensions. It feels really important. And sometimes I've had some readers say, do these people even like each other? And yes, but more importantly, they love each other. And that means sometimes they really see some things about each other that, of course, the character in, like the main character in question would not like the things that they see, but sometimes it's out of deep concern that they notice those things about their friends.
When you're writing, do your characters come to you? Do they speak to you, or are you someone who decides on a plot, decides on an arc for a character, and then see where they intersect?
I often, I outline, and then I start actually putting the characters in those ideas, those scenes or situations, and then I will realize that the next step of the outline is just not possible. Because given what it took to make this scene successful, I learned something about this character, or they have changed in some way, that the next step in whatever little outline I have, I have to re-outline given this new information. So kind of both. That's cool. A character, having characters talk. I really love writing dialogue because it is very hard for me. And they say things that it seems silly to say surprising because I wrote it all, but but they will have to move the scene along. Things will happen that then it's like, well, this is not the person I thought in the beginning. So it's a little bit of both.
What aspect of being in your 20s did you wanted to make sure were in this novel?
Oh, just mess. I feel like in my 20s, I was blessed to be in New York City for a lot of it. just, and this was before everybody was like videotaping everything, you know? You could really be in the club. Like you could go with your hair straight and then end up with your hair in a completely different hairstyle because you sweat it out, right? But now I feel like people would be too self-conscious, right, about that. And that is, I felt like I really needed to capture that feeling of trying things out, like trying people out, and also the ways that you can perhaps act before you really consider, like, why am I doing a thing? Mm-hmm. The ways that you're still like a mystery to yourself. When it takes a little bit more work to delude yourself in some ways when you're older. Because you know, it's like, you know, but you can, you know, earnestly not know or just really not think it through, I think, when you were younger.
The book jumps back and forth through time from the early 2010s to 2024, even to 2027. Mm-hmm. Why did you want to structure the book that way?
This is, I think, it's really exciting to me to... This is the thing that a lot of readers don't like about this novel, but it's also really exciting to me to hear readers talk about their experiences with the structure of the book, because the structure of the book is, it began out of a desire to feel like I was in the room with 4 women and I was asking them the story of their friendship. If I asked you and 3 of your good friends the story of your friendship, it might begin chronological, but it would soon not be chronological anymore. People would be like, well, wait a minute. It's important that you know that when you were doing this, I was doing this. I was trying to break up with him, and then this was happening. And then a different kind of like shape emerges, and it absolutely has to be like prismatic. It has to be a thing you can kind of pick up and turn around, because I wanted it to be about what it feels like for all of them to experience this friend group. And that means sometimes people, like, it's not till later, it's like, you didn't know I had this personal crisis happening around this time, but I did. And so that means also every moment of the novel cannot focus on just their friendship, but it intersects, like it informs why they're still in each other's lives.
You decided to go to 2027.
Yes.
That's an interesting choice of a year. It's not so far in the future. I mean, it's next year. Mm-hmm. Why did you pick 2027?
Well, you know, I was slow writing this. So when in 2016, 27 felt very ambitious. But then when I finished writing this book in 2023. And I had a feeling that the way, I think it was really post-pandemic, I got a feeling, I think we all did, that time was operating differently. It just feels like time's always felt elastic, but it feels like time is like both accelerated and like not really moving at all. So It felt like if I just projected a little bit into the future, there were things that in 2016, when I first started writing this, would seem very implausible. But given the way that time works now and the way that the world and like politics, et cetera, works now, you can tell me a lot of things are going to happen next year, and I would believe you. And I think a lot more people would today than they would have 10 years ago.
When you have to consider 2020 being in your writing process between COVID-19, the murder of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter protests, how did the story change after 2020?
The story changed. Can we spoil in this book club? I'm assuming you all read it.
People probably read it. Yeah, go ahead.
You even had an extra week because of the snow. Not to be a teacher about it, sorry. But so in 2020, I always knew that Nakia would end, like she would die in the novel. I knew that. The exact circumstances of it were not 100% what they are now. But one thing that moving back, so there was a period of time for 4.5 years where I lived back in Los Angeles between 2019 and 2024. and living back there, the place where I'm from, but I had not really lived as an adult, certain things just became really clear to me about policing, about surveillance, about what we believed was benevolent technology, and also about the sort of trend of criminalizing homelessness that made me, that all of those things really came to the fore in 2020, even before like the summer of like uprisings, but just the way that like the unhoused people were kind of just left to fend for themselves during the early months of the pandemic, but also the ways that really inspiring in LA particularly, mutual aid organizations really filled a lot of gaps for care for just all kinds of Angelenos. And so I just thought about what that would mean for somebody like Nakia differently. And I also just stopped being afraid of what that might mean for somebody like to actually write it.
We're actually going to ask you to read a little bit about Nakia as we start to talk about the characters individually.
Unlike many Black Angelenos she knew growing up, Nakia Washington's family could not trace their lineage to Louisiana, Texas, or Mississippi. They had arrived in California by way of New Jersey. They were seaboard people, had been for generations since an enslaved ancestor on her father Conrad's side, Anne, no last name, traveled from Maryland to Philadelphia in the early 1800s with the people who thought they owned her. She absconded into the city, thereby emancipating herself, family lore went. This intrepid ancestor had found shelter among the Black freedmen of Philadelphia and stayed inside one safe house or another for the better part of a year, not stepping into the sunlight or even venturing near windows. Nakia descended from a founding family of Black Newark, New Jersey. Anne, who eventually married a man named Washington, had the prudence after that first year in hiding to make her home outside of the city of her escape. Hers was a striving family, from washerwomen and day laborers to ministers and teachers to many minor first Blacks. First Black assistant superintendent of schools, first Black nurse administrator at a large urban hospital, first Black president of a local credit union, first Black delegate to the Eastern Regional Convention for the Presbyterian Church, first Black woman graduate of Seton Hall's Business School, and so on. It was Conrad's family history, yet Nakia's mother, Juanita, daughter of an electrician, took special pride in relaying it. Nakia, on the other hand, tended to tell only her closest friends that she came from free people. Not free from jump, who but a handful could claim that on this continent, but free for a good long while. Nakia's parents didn't come to Los Angeles to fulfill a dream of palm trees and swimming pools. They came for a short stint, dental school for her father, and stayed. They had been trying for a child for 12 years and got pregnant with Nakia's older brother, CJ, within a month of living in Los Angeles. That felt like reason enough. Plus, distance from their families helped them realize there was a world outside of the vineyard in Sag Harbor, outside of social clubs and debutante balls, and that they preferred this new world while still benefiting from access to the old one. Conrad continued the Washingtons of Newark's minor first Black legacy on the other coast. First Black-owned endodontist practice in West LA. The Washingtons had graduated from Kitchens before Nakia's great-great was born. So why had she gravitated to this sweaty, often unglamorous work? Not even the work of poor pay but respectable stages, genteel maitre d's, and haughty chefs de cuisine, but regular old kitchen labor, the work of ugly shoes and baggy pants and no degrees necessary and stains no matter one's fastidiousness. Why work with one's hands unless we're talking surgery or sculpture when one didn't have to? Well, there were hands, and then there were hands. Hands for building houses, tapping trumpet keys, turning lathes, cradling newborns, hands that, with the cooperation of feet keeping time on a pedal below, guided fabric through the percussive needle of a machine, hands with greased fingertips that pulled kinks into cornrows, palmed basketballs, rubbed backs, sanded wood, broke bones. A tactile person, Nakia was destined to work in a field that required literal grasping, and she might have taken to many of these other hands' pursuits, but for the adrenaline of cooking, the particular eroticism of shoulder brushing shoulder, language abutting language, hips bumping hips in the kitchen. By the time she graduated from culinary school, she could perform any task in a kitchen with proficiency, but none thrilled like Expo. Thank you.
What did you want to explore about class in this book?
I wanted to think about the ways that class, when you have a group of friends like this, how class can be one of the many kinds of friction, and also the way that as you get older, it suddenly, if it hasn't already, starts to emerge. You get older and suddenly you get an inheritance, like you have someone in your life who could leave you an inheritance. Or, you get older and your expectations for what it looks like to have made it start to diverge from your friends. I have a friend, the novelist Jade Chang, who talks about how in her 30s is when she realized not all of her friends just wanted to have fun and make art, right? Some of them wanted to own a home, some of them wanted to make a baby, and they started moving towards those things, sometimes very quickly. And it felt like one of those things that also for a person like Nakia, class is part of what leads her on her path. Mm-hmm. There are characters who do not think, and I'm not saying that it's a luxury to be thinking about what is your bigger purpose in life, but there are characters who are really just concerned about making money, right? Mm-hmm. They don't feel like they can look up enough from just, I need to establish myself, to think about, well, why am I doing these things? Am I good? But that is one of the things, not just particularly because of her class, but the legacy, of her family, where she feels like, well, I need to be, if I'm in a kitchen, I can't just be in a kitchen because we're out of kitchens, a long time ago.
Desiree goes with her grandpa to end his own life in Europe. They go through Paris, and these areas are really important to him. Historically, were these important to Black people, the areas of Paris that he went to?
Yes and no. They were not necessarily, they were important to Black artists, for sure.
Black artists, okay.
So maybe there's a little bit of myself popping out in some of Nolan's particular addresses of interest, because I've always been interested in just that period of Black expat life in Paris and why they were drawn to that city. People from obviously Josephine Baker, but also James Baldwin and Richard Wright and Buford Delaney, and really like two generations of Black artists, and why it had to do with a kind of freedom. And for Nolan, end of life, he is interested in retracing his steps in this period of time in this place where for a period of time he felt like there was a different kind of freedom, there was an option for something else, even though he didn't try to stay and make a go of it. It is something that still lives in his memory as a very special period of time.
Let's talk about January. She's at this big life crossroad. She's just broken up with her boyfriend of many years, moved to her own place. Then she found out she was pregnant. What scares her the most about her pregnancy?
Well, there's a lot of things. But I think January is interested in she wants a bigger life than getting pregnant in her with, I'm an elder millennial, and we seem to, a lot of us had children late. It seems like the young people are having children earlier again. But so in your early 30s is early for her. And also she feels like she has spent so much of her life before that kind of playing in the background to her partner, to Morris. And so it feels like, well, now the door is closed on doing something different because I am pregnant.
You wrote a really dramatic scene about prolapse after birth, and I don't think I've ever seen that in a book before. I don't remember. Yeah. Okay. You got all excited.
Yes.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Thank you. One of the things about, I think, in one way that there's like this world on the internet where it feels like we know everything more than we have like known before. But when it comes to women's health, there are just so many things that people still do not talk about. And I really wanted to think about what that like feels like in the body for a character, to have a character who feels like, okay, I did not actually in the beginning know if I wanted to have this baby, but now like I had one and now I have another one, and I feel like I know everything that's possible. And I just didn't even know about this thing, which is obviously like a failure of like our just like public health education, but also something that it seems like in 2020, I think it's supposed to be like 2022, at that point, it should not be possible, but it's still possible where people don't. In fact, a friend like sent me a video of a woman discovering, kind of making a joke out of it, but last week a woman discovering she had a prolapse because she was like weightlifting and then had like complications, and people in the comments were like, I didn't know this was possible. And it's like, oh yeah, people still don't really know so many things about women's health.
I'm getting ready to come up on Monique, so get ready for your questions. I'm going to head to the audience next. When we get Monique's point of view, it's not through her perspective, but through this viral blog that she has written. Why did you want us to meet her that way?
So one of the projects of this book is to think about how the experience of coming of age right now or over the last 2 decades and coming into middle age, which to me is the real coming of age, because I feel like it's harder than just leaving your parents' house, going from being an adolescent to a young adult. There are fewer sort of like guideposts to figure out how you're supposed to do this thing. And I was just interested in it's really important to me that characters actually listen to music, actually read things. I just don't feel like it makes sense. It does not make your work timeless to have people who don't consume culture. It just makes, to me, it feels like it's flat. Like it doesn't feel like a real like lived in world. I think about like Anna Karenina. There is so much culture in there. They're always referring to like operas and things that they're reading. And yes, I have to go to the footnotes to understand it all, but that's what makes it feel like lived in. And so to me, one of the big things that I think is a hallmark of the last 20 years is that a lot of people, what they are reading is just things on their phone, right? They're reading, like the majority of words that a lot of people are reading a day are other people's captions, right? For their posts. Or they're reading like people's Substacks or people's blogs. And I felt like that has, especially the more casual, like the blogging and the like captions and things like that, it has created its own kinds of like idioms. They change so quickly, like in 6 months' time, like people just speak differently and it spills into our real life. So it felt important to have a character really reflect some of that language. It was really hard. I will say the character that was hardest to write was Monique, because I was committed to, until sort of the third part of the book where things change, we only really experience her through her own writing. But because she is so aware of an audience and she is trying to cultivate an audience, that means that seeing around her, right? It's a challenge because she is always trying to position herself in like a way that she thinks will be useful to her.
Let's go to the audience for some questions. Who's got mics? Back there, okay.
On the other side of the column from you, there was a hand.
Hello.
Right here.
Hi. Is it on? Yep. Hi. Big fan. Speaking of Monique, early in the book, she has like a bad time at a university when she's working on a kind of like archival project, because she realizes that people want to remember things differently than maybe they should be. But how would you say that you treated like memory and perception as like a kind of like running thread through these women's relationships over time?
That is a very good question. I think about when people tell me that that my characters feel so real, if there's any reason why they do, I think it has to do with their memories. And when you say perception, the way that I think about it as a writer, I think about it as like their way, like each character has their own way of seeing. So even if it is just describing them walking from here to like Spring Street to get on the train, like those 4 people are going to see things completely different because everything is filtered through the way that their perspective, how they, like the way that they notice the world. So I think a lot about it. I think a lot about, when I think about memory, that is probably the most exciting part for me of writing, is thinking about how what is happening is related to their experiences. Another thing that happens a lot when I teach is that, a lot of times people complain about like, there's too much backstory, like the backstory pulled me out. But I am a lover of Saint Toni Morrison, and and like the backstory is the story, right? Like memory, like is like we are repositories of our memories. It doesn't mean that we have to like, not be able to have them in the right like position so that we can move forward in our lives, but we are like, they are a part of us. And so to me, when I think about building those for characters, I think that is probably like the most important part. More than like where they're going is how it is informed by where they've been before. Yeah.
I think we have a question here. The backstory is the story. That's staying with me. Anyway.
My question is a little simpler, I think. I just want to know, how exactly did Nakia die?
How do you think she died?
I don't know. Like, the protests happened, she made it home, but then it's
Did
just
she make it
like-
home?
She didn't make it home?
No. No, she did not make it home.
Wow.
You didn't know how she was going to die. You said you knew she was going to die at the end of this book.
Yes.
Did that change how she died?
Well, so she, I will not leave you hanging. So they are called less than lethal projectiles, but they are often lethal. And she was hit with one in her head that killed her. And so the last thing we experience is her belief that like she had made it, but she had not. And yes, and as far as did it change how she died, it changed not a lot. This is one of the interesting things about when I outline and then I change it. There is something from the original, like the essence of it, that it still kind of ends up being how the book goes. It's just that in the particular like details, things have to change. Mm-hmm. But to me, I feel like, well, I need to throw away this outline and I need a brand new one. But then when I look at the first one and then I look at the last one, it's like, oh, these details were just very like similar. Mm-hmm. And so the location was actually the same. Very interested in the 6th Street Bridge in Los Angeles for a lot of personal Los Angeles reasons. But so the location was the same, but the mechanism was just slightly different.
Did we have a question up here? Yes.
This relates to this question. The way she was killed basically by an autonomous AI type of policy or whatever you want to call it, is I always think of your book when now the government is fighting the AI company about exactly for the same reason, that not to use AI autonomously as a weaponry. So I don't know how you came up with that idea, but it was in your book in other places too, this AI type of police robots.
Well, I mean, so I finished writing this book at the end of 2023, but I wrote that scene at the beginning of 2023. And like I said, I was kind of afraid to write it, but then by the end of 2023, after seeing the kinds of advanced technological warfare being used on the people of Gaza, I realized, oh, these things are already happening. They just are not happening here yet. But as far as like AI assisted technology being used and no human there to man it, whether it's because of drones or these sort of like quadcopter drones, these things I saw that were happening already to people in Gaza, and I realized, oh, okay, so if these things are happening here, they're going to happen here too, or they will at least try, right? And so, to me, I had already written that chapter, but to me, I felt a little less afraid, like a little less tinfoil hat about having done it, because unfortunately, I witnessed that these things are already, like, they are existing, and that 2027 did not feel like too soon to write that in fiction.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, there's one here.
Just wondering if you would want to attend one of those dinner party type salons in Los Angeles.
Oh, man.
Because at one, it seems like they're really important conversations, but the way you write it, it also tends to come off a little pretentious too. So just wondering if you'd want to be either a host
Who's
or a guest.
to say I haven't? You know, I would, because my husband makes fun of me. I have an umbrella term that I say is anthropologically interesting, which I think is really just like might be useful for fiction, honestly. And so I would want to attend one just because I love stories. So it might be unbearable in the moment, but there could be something useful that also comes out of it.
There's a question back there, and there's a couple down here.
If this book were to be adapted into a television miniseries, who would you want to play the four women?
Oh, well, the easy answer is, so two of my friends from junior high school, read the audiobook, and they were both actors. My friend Asia Naomi King and Ashley Nicole Black. Ashley Nicole Black is also a very talented TV writer, currently in the Room for Shrinking, and writing the sequel to Ma, the Octavia Spencer scary movie. And so, I mean, in my dream world, they would be two of the actors in any adaptation. But there's so many people that I admire. And there's also, I feel like, a lot of, we live in a time, I think because maybe it's just like so hard for movies to get made, that it's like the same people in every single thing. And so there's also so many people who probably I am not familiar with that I would be excited to also get a chance to be in a movie if it was ever adapted. I don't know.
I think we had questions down here.
So one of my favorite descriptions you have of Monique is that she's a character who's too smart to want what she wants. Mm-hmm. And I remember that stuck with me because I definitely have thought that about like someone in my life, but realized that the weird privilege is that they love me, so they're bringing me along the decision-making process. I'm really curious if there's a core desire that you had in like your early, like your either adolescent years, your young adult years, and how you either had let go of it entirely or it's morphed into something that was a little more sustainable. That can be something in your life or just also in your work.
You know, I am really boring. I really only wanted to do this.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
That's it. So I wanted to write books. So there wasn't, and yeah, I feel very like fortunate. I feel like if there are people in my life, all of my friends who work like in the entertainment industry, they're smarter than that industry. They are brilliant at their craft, but the industry is dumb, right? Like it's just so unfair to them because it's like they are brilliant actors and they have to be around dumb people. Like the people who make the decisions are just always thinking about trends and the bottom line, but it's like I just feel like for them, but it's not the same as Monique, because Monique is making a choice that is about crafting a self that is like not like, that is what she thinks is like would be popular, right? So that is a thing that, for instance, Nakia is like so anxious about, is like, why would you be interested in having to make a life being someone you're not, or someone who's just like a part of you? And I have not, fortunately, had to do that, and I don't really know a lot of people who are doing exactly that either, fortunately.
Hi, so kind of going back to the backstory is the story. It was such a bombshell for me to read towards the end more about Desiree's family. That was so different from like what you thought about her upbringing, and even telling some of the story from her sister's perspective. And I guess I don't have a very specific question, but just kind of would like to hear some of your thoughts on what chose you to kind of drop that bombshell and then kind of leave it unexplored overall.
What do we mean by a bombshell?
Like just like it was to meet the father and the sister, and
you didn't feel deeply satisfied by that?
I wanted a sequel now of her actual life and the grandfather's life, because then you kind of also learn that the grandfather wasn't as honest or upfront about
if you are to believe these other people's experiences, right? Well, I'm going to take that as a compliment, actually, because one of the things that I tried to do with this book, in the beginning, I thought it would just be these 4 friends, and it would really just be about like not your relatives kind of friendship. But when I wrote, I just kept thinking about Desiree, and I kept thinking about Danielle, and part of why the story begins with Desiree is because she is the one who is the most interested in creating a family outside of her family because of her circumstances. But I kept thinking about, she does have the sister, and she is so desperate for sisterhood, and part of it is because of like the pain of estrangement from this sister. And it felt like one of the things that the book needed to do was to let Danielle have a moment, because I knew that I wanted to also have a moment later where they reconciled, but it wouldn't mean anything if we never saw Danielle. Like if you see them just for that brief paragraph and a half at Malcolm X Park in Washington, D.C., and not Meridian Hill Park, according to me. And and it doesn't mean anything if we don't get that chapter before with Danielle. Or can mean something very sort of like superficial, like, well, she's healing, so she's ready to reconnect. But it felt important to me to have Danielle really kind of round out like that meditation on sisterhood. And also, it felt important to me that we learned through Danielle then the ways that Nakia has been trying to protect Desiree. Right, Danielle's been calling her with all kind of nonsense on and off for 2 decades. And Nakia has just been really like firm about like, you're not actually ready to be back in this person's life, so leave us alone. Yeah.
One over here.
Hello. So most of the characters we see them in, New York or Southern California. And I know that you grew up in Southern California, but have lived a lot of your adult life in New York. And I wonder how you thought about the tension between, you hear a lot about New York versus LA. I wonder how you thought about the tension between those two places, or the comparisons between those two places as like a lifestyle and a culture as you were writing this book, as someone who's lived in both places.
I think that they're really like mismatched to be compared, because LA is, I think part of the reason why people compare them though is because of the ways that, you know, New York being sort of like the home of publishing, there it gets to be a lot in like our cultural imagination because of literature, and obviously because of Hollywood, LA gets to be a lot in our cultural imagination. But as far as like cities that one lives in, they are so different. Like it should be like you're comparing like LA and Houston or something. You shouldn't be comparing LA and New York. They feel completely different and they operate very differently. It maybe makes more sense to compare like New York to Chicago or something. But I love LA, but I prefer to live in New York. I'll just say that. I tried it. I went back. I had a child there. I did the whole thing. But I feel that there are a lot of things that I really like, that I admire about LA. I really admire any sort of artist who is not working in Hollywood, because nobody in LA cares about you. Like they just do not care about you. But because of that, there's like a real a way that you can get sort of plugged into the creative community really quickly, and people are just making stuff. Like they don't know how they're gonna make money, but because of that, they are just taking chances and being really creative. And it used to be a cheaper place to live, but it is no longer the case. And that really does, I think, tip the scales, because it's like if you're going to pay New York rent, you should be in New York, in my opinion.
Do we have any more questions? I want to ask about the beginning of your book. Mm-hmm. You have Audre Lorde quoted here as saying, "I am blessed within myself who are come to make our shattered faces whole." Mm-hmm. Why did you choose that quote?
Oh, man. You know, there's something about those lines of that poem that shouldn't work on a grammatical letle. It shouldn't work. I am blessed within myself who are come to make our shattered faces whole. There's like a subject verb like tension happening there that, I don't know, it's something about it. When I read it the first time, you just keep reading it. But I also think about what friendship of this kind is about. And it is about, there's something that feels like it shouldn't work. Like there are these like disparate parts, but they do work. So it felt like it really can cover the whole thing, thinking about like where these people began and sort of where they end up, and thinking about how them being together is a blessing, even though sometimes it does also feel like it is still broken, or there's something like shattering there. But also, it was just like lines that haunted me. I often like poetry, or feel drawn to poetry that for some reason, like the language, like it doesn't sit right with me. There was an epigraph, one of the two in The Turner House, my first novel, from Philip Levine, from the poem "They Feed, They Lion." And I mean, the title alone, "They Feed, They Lion," does not seem like there's like a tension there. And part of it feels like it's trying to mirror like Black speech in some ways, but also there are just like other lines in the poem like that like something about them makes me anxious. But that poem is about, the Turner House is set in Detroit, and that poem is about Detroit, and it's like also kind of about like the great migration. And it's like I just felt some kind of recognition to that poem when I read it, even though Philip Levine was, not a part of the Great Migration because he was not Black, but he was a poet of Detroit.
You've been on tour with this book. Is there anything that you haven't been asked that you want to be asked so that you may answer it?
Anything?
Or something that hasn't been touched on that you've always wanted to talk about?
I really love Smokey Robinson. I don't think he gets enough credit, I don't think he gets enough credit. But he gets a lot of credit, though. But No, I think that probably the thing that I would love to talk about the most, I think, well, I know that a book that has an ending like this, that there's something that is like really kind of like unsettling for readers, but I really hope people can just think about bigger than like the sort of shock of it. It's a meditation, the entire book, bigger than just friendship, is about community. And it is about the way that the book ends. It begins thinking about friendship in the ways that we mostly think about it. And it ends thinking about, well, who are you willing to have be a part of your community? And what are you willing to sacrifice to protect those people in your community? You should not have to sacrifice those things. But what does it mean to think broader about like who is worthy to kind of put your arms around? I've been thinking about that a lot, of course, since seeing all of the brave people in Minneapolis and the ways that they have shown that community can be more expansive than people who look like you or who worship like you or who live next door to you necessarily. They might live on the other side of town. And I just think that it's something that, especially in this country, people are going to have to figure out a way to have a more expansive view of that.
Angela, thank you so much for being with us. Angela Flournoy.
I'm going to get you to exit around so you can get ready to sign books for folks. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it. We want to thank our partners at the New York Public Library for hosting us every month and getting e-copies, and thanks to Ryan and the rest of the Green Space for putting this together on such short notice, and to Jordan, our producer, for making this event happen. Okay, we're already in March. You probably know what the book is, but we're going to tell you what it is anyway. A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Mujumdar. The story follows a family preparing to leave India after their city has been ravaged by the effects of climate change. But when a thief inadvertently steals their U.S. visas, the family learns how far they will go to retrieve them. Megha Mujumdar will be here for a Get Lit event on Tuesday, March 24th. Fingers crossed, there will be no blizzard, at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. Tickets are available now, so mark your calendars. Happy reading, and I will see you next time.